And I have a Comanche 250, 1964 Comanche 250. And this is a great topic about air conditioning because we are expected to get up to 115 degrees by Sunday.
Oh my word.
So let's go ahead and have other people go ahead and introduce yourselves, and let's go ahead. Somebody would like to jump in? Go ahead.
I'm Bill
Jim Brown.
Higgs. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jim Brown, Calgary, Alberta, 260, 65.
Welcome.
Nice to see you guys.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Same here, dear.
All right. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of go down the road. You know, I used to be a school teacher. I retired from that. So I'm just going to go down the row and call on people. So we'll get everyone in here. So let's start. After my name, I see George Merriman. George,
Yes.
you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Western Massachusetts. I just talked to somebody that was referred to me for 3 hours. He needed 3 hours in his Comanche, newly acquired from Pennsylvania, and he's gonna do this for his son. He has tons of flying time and is an A&P mechanic, and they're bringing this Comanche back up to flying status, and then his son is going to take it and fly it to Yakima. So he'll be up in your region here in just a little bit.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I think he's gone back up to Washington, and I was very familiar with, well, somewhat familiar with Yakima in that I was in Vancouver, Washington when St. Helens went off and dumped a whole lot of soot up in Yakima.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So I was kind of envious. I'm always envious of the state of Washington because I had a house in Vancouver for a little bit. We lost the Comanche too. I mean, that's a sad story, but I was down at Pearson Air Park right on the river. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yes, I grew up in Vancouver.
Oh, you did? My goodness. Then you know Wally Olson.
Yes, I do. I went to high school with his daughter.
Oh, no kidding. I come to know Wally very, very well because I was an instructor there at Wally's Field and owned a small house just a couple of blocks off the runway, and I used to run my dog down there.
My goodness.
Yeah, beautiful airport, and I understand that it might still be there.
Now, you can kind of see where it was. They were going to do put in, a business area and all that kind of thing. Yeah. It really hasn't.
So the runway's gone.
They thought it was going to, but anyway, there's no way you can land there because they've got buildings and things.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, the Comanche we lost was a mechanic out of Pearson Air Park, and he went up to Columbia. Now, is there a little airport up closer to St. Helens? Columbia, it's still in the valley?
I'm not familiar with Columbia Airport.
He was supposed to pick that airplane up and fly it down at Pearson for some maintenance. Never heard from him again. And some talk about him having engine problems and having to ditch in the Columbia River, and that's not a great place to end up. But I'll let everybody have a chance, and I'll back off.
Well, it's good talking to you.
Envy you. And you're at the Tri-Cities area in
yes.
Seattle.
Yeah, over in the east side.
East side. Yep, that's right. Yep.
We're by car about an hour and a half from Yakima.
Well, I used to fly for Air Oregon, so we would go out to Richland, Pendleton, end up in Baker, Ontario, and out to Boise, and then back again.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, we keep our plane. We keep our plane in Richland.
Oh, you do? Yeah, beautiful location.
Yeah.
I always wanted to get down to John Day because it's down in the middle of nowhere, but never made it. Yeah, did a lot of flying out that way. Bend and what was that other airport down by Bend? Great place, great place.
Redmond?
Yeah, Redmond, I think.
Yep. Well, we probably should let some other people introduce themselves. And George, I could talk to you for a long time. Yep.
Yeah, when
So,
you,
how about
when you
James?
said Washington, I beamed right up.
James, why don't you introduce yourself? It says James iPad.
Oh, hi. Well, I'm James Brown. Doesn't matter. I'm in Calgary, Alberta presently now, but I used to be in Boundary Bay in Vancouver. So I was always on your side of the fence a few times, like down to Arlington, Seattle, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I've got a 260, 65, 260.
Great. Well, welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Bill,
Love being here.
Bill Hicks, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Bill Hicks. I'm in Walsenburg, Colorado. Spanish Peaks Airport. I fly a 1965 260 also.
Cool. All right. And next I see Robert K. Robert, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is Robert Klein. I fly a 180 around the Charlottesville, Virginia area. And I'm going to Oshkosh, but I'd like another set of eyeballs. So if you're partway between Virginia and Oshkosh, let me know and we'll see what we can work out.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Next we have November 7736 November.
You'll have to open up your mute. Unmute.
November 7736 November. Are you available?
They're unmuted. They just haven't said anything.
Okay.
It shows mute on my screen.
Okay. Well, we can come back to him or her later. So let's go on then to Dave Shaver. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, that's me. Same names. I'm the same person as my name on the screen. I fly at 65 260 like about 20 other people on here, it sounds like tonight. And mine's third from the last, serial number 4297. 3 airplanes after mine was a B model. But I do have a question for you 250 guys. My IA buddy is working on a 250 fuel injected. I think he said it's like a 62 or 63. I'm not sure when the factory started doing it, but unrelated to fuel injected, he had to replace a bladder. He pulled the bladder out and it has a PA 3039 bladder in it. Has anybody ever heard of that in a 250?
They basically the same bladders because the wings are pretty much the same. I don't think there's much difference in them.
He said this bladder, unlike the one that's in my airplane, is, and like other ones he's seen, has some kind of like wedge underneath of it, and the sump location or the drain location is a completely different place, and it's stamped. He showed me a picture on his phone he took of the stamp on the bladder, and it says PA 3039 on it. And it's really got him confused. I told him, I said, well, I'd ask the gang on here and I'd see if anybody, the airplane was not too recently bought by a guy at the airport up here. And the N number was 14 Yankee Pop. I don't know if anybody knows that airplane or not. It was all white. I call it Casper. So, but anyway, I just thought that was kind of weird that he said it's got a, the whole system is set up differently than other bladder systems in Comanches that he's seen for some reason. I don't know.
Dave, if you don't get an answer tonight, Zach Grant would probably be your best source.
Yeah, I've got connection. I got some contact info for Zach. That's a good idea. I could talk to him, but thanks. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm still in Maryland and I'm still plugging around in the same old airplane for 26 years. So hoping to go to Oshkosh, but my partner has a personal issue that may throw a damper in that, a big damper where I may even be having to look for another partner, but it's nothing to do with our partnership. So, but anyway, yep, hope to get to Oshkosh. I do have an invite to go out in a TBM with a guy, so maybe I'll see you all out there in some manner. So I'll shut up. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, Martin Horton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly would. Martin Horton from based in Grand Prairie, Texas, as you can tell from the accent, a 65 260B. Currently in the shop getting upgraded with Avionics, and hopefully one day will be finished with its autopilot installed. But unfortunately, as soon as that happens, I have to have eye surgery. So I won't get to fly it even when it's finished, which is frustrating beyond belief.
Get your lenses replaced?
Not initially. I don't want to get into it all, but it's something called pterygium in one of my eyes, which has to be removed first, and then the lens is going to be replaced later.
Love the lenses. The world is blue. It's not yellow. It's really blue. You love it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Martin, Jim here. If you have problems with your eyes, and I have a few Canadians that went down there, go to Tijuana, Mexico. They got the best eye clinic there and very reasonably priced, and you'll get your ticket back.
Okay, well, I as far as I can tell, it's not going to be a problem with losing. As far as I can tell, there should be no problem with it. But of course, things can always go wrong.
Right. Well, if it does go wrong, remember Tijuana, Mexico, right in, they got one of the best eye clinics in the world there.
Okay.
I've been there. They'll look after you very well. Give you a whole new lens or whatever you require.
Great.
And at a reasonable price.
What are they charging per lens down there for the progressive lenses?
When you
The whole,
Oh.
both eyes done with brand new lenses was $5,000 US.
It was 6 here in Alabama with the progressive lenses. That was 5 years ago.
Okay. We just,
What's the name of the clinic?
CJ, I can't remember. It's the only major eye clinic in Tijuana.
Got it.
So you go there. It's a big hospital. It's a great place. I have a friend of mine that has a 421, and he had to go down and get his eyes done. And like he says, he sees in 3D now, so things are good.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a good price. I went down with them just as a backup. I'm fine with my eyes, but I was very impressed with their service down there. And you can fly into San Diego, and they'll pick you up, take you across the border, do the whole operation. You can stay there at a reasonable price, and they'll bring you back.
Wow.
And there's no issue. There's no issues at the border because they'll just give you a medical card, and they have a special lane for you to go in and out of.
A lot of people do one eye at a time, so it's probably 2 trips.
I don't know about that, but
Great.
I know he had both eyes done. So
You know, that's really good info because many people's insurance doesn't cover vision. And so vision and dental are two big issues for American that have to do with our poor medical system. I mean, it's not a poor medical system in many ways, but in this way it is.
Well,
So
I hate to interrupt, but I'm old enough that I'm eligible for Medicare, and I've been told that Medicare will cover it.
okay,
Oh, well, there's a $225 deductible for each procedure, but I mean, I don't count that as money, if you know what I mean.
sure.
well, that sounds good, Martin, because as we get older, we deserve the finer things in life.
Well, I agree with you there.
Right, CJ?
Absolutely. I'm getting into that class there and I'm still waiting to be treated with the respect to my age.
Been on,
Just
I've
make
been
a
on
circle
Medicare.
and you'll be there real soon.
I've
Yeah,
been on
exactly.
Medicare for 2 years.
That's
Before
not
that was
very
in-
nice.
Um, Well, for those who are, can you confirm or not? By the way, I'm probably going to have to kill my video because I've definitely got some network bandwidth issues here. Just want to thank Robert Klein and Margie for stepping up here.
You are welcome. So I want to hear, Martin, what avionics are you getting installed?
Okay, I'm crazy. I'm getting a GTX, sorry, a G500 TXI and a new G345 transponder and a GTN 650 and a GFC 500 autopilot.
That will be nice when that's all installed. That will be very nice.
I've got some good news for those of you getting the G500 autopilot, which is that on the 1st, July 1st, Sonny Monaco, who just installed and documented a 4-axis GFC 500 system, including videos, photographs, will be presenting on the installation of a 4-axis GFC 500 in his Comanche. So spread the word and, share the Zoom link and come and find out about that. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yes, I saw him mention that. I mean, other Comanche drivers, do you find a problem with your?
I don't have any issues with y'all. No.
I know we don't have any problem with yaw is what you're talking about, right? Yaw. We don't have any problem.
Right, no, I mean, but I forget his name now. Was it Sonny? Said that, because he's got the yaw damper. Actually, while we're here, can we settle? Somebody put me right. Is it yaw damper or dampener? Because I can't figure out. Everybody uses both terms. But anyway, I've never thought. I know most twins have a yaw damper, but I've never really considered it worthwhile in an airplane like Comanche. But
So,
it was Sonny. He was raving about it.
he's raving about it. However, S-Tech, which has been at it for a very long time, and which certified using the Comanche 400, said that 400 flew so beautifully with the 2-axis S-Tech installation that they were recommending against purchasing the yaw damper, even though it's available from S-Tech. And they are doing the twins, and so are Garmin. So it may be different for the twins, but it seems to be you can do it if you want. But from what S-Tech was saying, they didn't see a need for it in the Comanche. They said in the Bonanzas, it's different. That's a differently balanced airplane. And there they recommended getting a yaw control.
Right, I understand that. But is it Sonny who's been documenting his stuff on the
Piper Comanche Facebook group? Yes, exactly.
Right. He was raving about his yaw damper.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, oh, maybe I should have rethought it. But I've never, well, in fact, I'll be honest, in no airplane I've ever flown have I really, which have all been Pipers, have I really thought there was a problem with needing a yaw damper. I mean, I can understand it in some of the twins because they do tend to wag their tails a bit. But I was just wondering whether I was alone or maybe I'm just immune to noticing yaw.
I can only relay what I've got, what I've been told.
I could.
The 180 has nothing, and oh, go ahead.
I could see it would be useful during climb out if it's applying right rudder for you, and keeping you from keeping the ailerons from having to deflect to the left. Other than that, I don't see how it'd be useful.
But you've got the rudder trim for the climb out.
Yaw dampeners are for bonanzas.
Hey, I'll agree. I'll go with that. It's real nice in a Navajo too.
Yaw dampeners are overrated.
Yeah. I think the question is Sonny's raving, but if he had only installed a 2-axis system, would he have been just as happy? And you just can't know that.
What's the 4th axis?
It's the electric trim, so I shouldn't be calling it a 4-axis system. We're not time traveling, and thanks for the correction. You're right. But it's a 4-servo system. Pitch, roll, yaw, and then the automatic electric trim.
Yeah, I do think the electric trim is worthwhile.
Definitely. My name's
Yeah,
Fred
now
Law- Go ahead.
the electric trim, here's the trick with the electric trim. I've put in a question because I'm trying to remember who it was. Pat Peterson said if Garmin is annoying if you don't put in electric trim because it keeps giving you a, hey, fix your trim indicator. But it's an optional extra. So is it really going to be that annoying if you don't install it? Or is there a way that we can, we can just adjust that parameter so that it doesn't, notify you quite as often as if you don't have the electric trim. So that's, I'm trying to find that out because I think it's going to be of interest to all of us making decisions about whether I'm going to spend essentially what's going to be an extra $7,000 to get electric trim.
Oh. Well, CJ in our test flights with the 250, he didn't have electric trim. Didn't complain at all about it.
Yeah, but our test flights in the 250 were for the Trio Pro Pilot, and it flew absolutely beautifully with 2-axis and no electric trim. But what we're talking about is the GFC 500, which is starting to have its first installations completed in the Comanche. And welcome, Mark, by the way. And while I've got you, it's 7:30, and normally we would start right now. We have just want to give a quick welcome to everybody to Comanche Zoom on air conditioning. And we are going to start a few minutes late, mostly because we had a complete network failure at Pete Morse's location, literally at 5 minutes before we normally start. And so we're in the process of recovering because of some last minute slide changes that we had done, Pete and I had done just before we started. So it is going to be a little bit more switching between screens than usual. And we do have also a tag team of several different people who have installed either market available air conditioning systems and PJ Medella is going to be speaking about the one that he's been working on, which I'm just thrilled about. It's super innovative. And then Jeff Munford, who's been working on another innovative air conditioning system for Comanche and other light aircraft, had a tragedy and won't be joining us tonight, but we'll be back another night to talk about his. So I'm expecting a startup of about 10 minutes after the hour. I do want to just do 2 quick public service announcements. The first is this weekend, this Saturday is the last day of Sentimental Journey at Lock Haven in Pennsylvania. And Lock Haven is the facility, the Piper facility, where all of our airplanes were built, all our twins, all our singles, everything. And this year, they have the first serial number 1 Comanche ever built. And I don't know if Les Thomas is here and able to share his screen, but a little bit later, and if you're able to share your screen and pick it up, please do so. But we've got some photographs. It's a beautiful restoration by Norm and Peg, whose last name I have to go look up right now. It would normally be on the slides. And it's literally pride of place in the Piper Museum. It's shiny, it's beautiful. It is unusually for us. It is November 2024 Papa. and it's right there in the middle of the Piper Museum on the floor. Hey, Pete Morse is back. Pete, wonderful. So there you have it. And I'm going to just hand it over to Pete for a moment, if you can speak to walk through. These photographs were taken by a Comanche driver from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, named Joseph Capercini, and he is down there. He went and had dinner with Norm, and as you can see, this is it, the very, very first Comanche. There are a few small things that were slightly different because Piper was playing with different landing gear configurations. So if you look closely, you can see, and I don't think it's visible in these photos, that there is a change and some different metal riveting because they, you know, they did one thing and then they went back to the gear that we now have. Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, I'm gonna see it tomorrow. I'm flying up to Sentimental Journey.
Oh, brilliant. Well, the other thing I wanted to let you all know is that this weekend there is a fly-in, and you can register for it, and that registration will get you onto the list of people who are flying into Lock Haven to take your airplanes home to see mom. And that registration is non-required, but what will happen is we'll start sending you last-minute emails about weather, and we'll send you a knee board. And we'll let the folks who have got food know we're coming and what to expect. So to register, and we'll stick a link into the chat window in a little bit, but you just go to northeastcomanche.org, and then there's a blue bar across the top, and underneath that blue bar, you can click on fly-ins, and then you can then select register, and there'll be a little drop down where you select which fly-in you're registering for, and just select, you know, this coming Saturday at Lock Haven, and fill in your info. Let us know if you have seats available. If you don't have a flyable airplane, but you'd like to go and you're somewhere in the area, just go ahead and let us know that you're looking for a ride, and it's possible we'll be able to hook you up with a pilot going your way, especially if you put in a note that you're willing to wipe the bugs off or split the fuel.
So you're saying, CJ, you're saying that fly-in is not related to the Sentimental Journey?
It is. I mean, it's the last day of Sentimental Journey, and the person who invited us is actually John Brierton, an engineer for Piper and the head of the Piper Aviation Museum at Lock Haven.
Okay, well, since I'm going up tomorrow, I didn't know anything about it, and I've got some buddies we're gonna fly up tomorrow, but just for the day. But you know, I went up a number of years ago on a Saturday, and I got there late morning, and half the airplanes were gone.
You
They
know,
were going home.
You're right. For the real Sentimental Journey that the Cubs all come to, it is kind of an all-week event, and the main thing happens in the middle.
That's why I was wondering whether it was something separate from, you know, from Sentimental Journey, because Saturday's kind of dead. So that's why I'm going up tomorrow. I just want to see everything. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, it's great. Yep, no, they said the museum, it'll be open. It is the last day of Sentimental Journey, and we're hoping to just have a passel of Comanches show up for Saturday and take a picture on the ramp. So what you need to do, Dave, is you and your buddies in Comanches, we need you to take pictures of your airplanes in front of the Lock Haven building, and you'll just be the leading edge of the storm.
Yeah, the storm, all right.
And then send them off to piper32p@gmail.com, and me if you've got my email, and we'll add you to the photographic information. The second set of information, so that's it. So go to northeastcomanche.org, click on fly-ins, and then just fill in the registration. And Dave, you may as well stick yours in there just for fun, and even though you're going to be coming a couple of days earlier. The second public service announcement is ComancheTown. And so as many of you know, we're back. You know, we've had enough social distancing. Here we are. You know, everything's happening. So Oshkosh is happening. ComancheTown is happening at Oshkosh. If you are going to Oshkosh and you would like to park with other Comanches, that is going. It's true. They are expecting such record crowds at Oshkosh and in Vintage that they've asked us to be extremely organized. So we have, what are we up for registrations, Pete?
Got 35 right now, and I hope more.
Oh yeah, well, people are just finding out. I think I just threw up the registration link today. So the registration link for ComancheTown at Oshkosh is actually in a slightly different place. And for that, although there is a registration link on the Northeast website under the fly-ins registration, for that, you go to northeastcomanche.org, and right a little to the right of the fly-ins is something called any form links.
On the
And-
screen, CJ, at the lower part here.
Great. Yep. So when you click on any form links on the bottom right, you'll see Oshkosh ComancheTown. And just fill in your info. The way this is going to work is Vintage at Oshkosh, actually our area happens to be run by a Comanche driver, and he said, I can't break any rules, but he said, I can certainly tell you how to work with us to your best advantage, and I really want to help you do that. So if you're coming to Oshkosh, let us know you're coming. Please, if at all possible, we would need to get as many Comanches on the ground by the 23rd, which is Friday, as possible. They want us to arrive in a, if possible, a 4 or 5 hour window. So we're not trying to formation fly in, because that's not really what we know how to do. And we have a bunch of Comanche pilots that are ex-military or ex-air show, and all of you guys that do that, you know, God bless you, but you've also made it clear that for those of us that don't, it would not be a good idea to try to have us formation fly into Oshkosh before we know how. So anyways, we're just going to try to, we're assemble at an airport nearby. When you register, you'll get an email about the final selection of the airport southwest of Oshkosh. You don't have to stop at this airport to assemble. You can just get to Oshkosh sometime on the 23rd. But if you want to come in early, it's going to be either Baraboo or it's going to be John Grishke's 57C, and they're going to do a fuel discount. And the reason that we're having trouble is that we have all these other old types, you know, picking airports in the area, and we just don't want to have a situation where there's, you know, 50 of us and 70 of them, and the fuel truck is going crazy. So we just want us to be able to land, assemble, and then we'll just take off one at a time. And we'll fly to the fix to enter the Fisk and Ripon arrival. And once we've landed, they will know that we're coming, because we're going to send them the list a day ahead of time, and they're going to make sure that that many spots are available for us.
I'm going to
getting
be
there.
revising the form tonight, later on tonight. Right now, you have a choice of Sunday to the 25th through August 1st. And I'm going to fix it so you can actually choose Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday as your arrival. Right now, it doesn't allow for that. In fact, right now, this is what we've got coming in. This is on Sunday, the day before, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and following ending Sunday. So as you can see, we've got like 27 people signed up that are going to be there on Thursday. But there, I think, are a total of 35 or 36 right now that are signed up to show up at some point.
Great. All right. And Pete's put up a list of what's upcoming. For those of you who don't know, Katama is literally some of the longest and best grass runways on the planet. And you literally park, drive your airplane down. They give us a discount for parking at the beach, and there's food available. So come and eat lunch, get ice cream, bring your family, and go to the beach.
Hey, CJ.
Yes.
About arriving with everyone else to Oshkosh and parking with everyone else, is it going to be difficult to park with everyone else if we don't arrive together on that Friday before?
It will be more difficult. And the reason is that the Vintage created an official first come, first serve policy. And so what we're going to be doing is they've committed that as we have, well, they've committed to a couple of things. So first of all, the reason we want as many people on the ground on the 23rd is Oshkosh rows are 7 airplanes wide. So, you know, they literally just park next to each other, 7 airplanes wide. Obviously, they leave enough space that you can easily drive down the middle of the road. And there's something called end capping, where you obviously need one end of the row open so you can get airplanes in. The other end of the row is a camping space. that will be dedicated only to Comanches for ComancheTown. So those will be able to put airplanes in there that get there later than the 23rd. In addition, and this is the other reason we need everybody to register, as people leave, they've committed to make sure that we can bring Comanches into their spot where normally they do just fill it in with another arrival. So if we know you're coming in and we know somebody else is going out, because when you register, we'll ask you for your anticipated day of departure and your anticipated day of, anticipated day of arrival, your anticipated departure day. When you land, we may have you park somewhere else temporarily, and then we'll bring your airplane up and put you in an emptying spot. So the size of ComancheTown is going to be partially dictated by the number of people who can get in there on the Saturday ahead of time, because the space that we get is obviously going to be better because we're arriving early. You know, it'll be closer to the middle of show center. And that's why when we pulled everybody, especially the people who come every year, we ended up saying we're going to try to get everybody there Friday, and we have a lot of people coming in early. So it should be a big group. Last thing they said is, even if you can't fit into the early ComancheTown, they've committed to make something called Tony's Trolley, which is a cutoff minivan, available to drive down to the South 40 and pick up your camping gear and anything else you want to bring from your airplanes. And then you can just come up, and it has 2 spaces. And, it's like behind the wing to the end of the tail is all a big camping area. And they said, hey, you've got 2 spaces per airplane, so your friends are more than welcome to, come up. And so they only have to pitch camp once, and then we'll bring their airplanes up as we get space.
Okay, cool. If I've already registered, should I re-register now that the form is fixed, or when the form
Yes,
is
that would be great. Yep. And we'll be able to sort that out. Pete Morse and Pat Donovan are wizard organizers, and together they've created an amazing sort of organization. The other benefit is you will get to find out who all is coming, and you'll have their airplanes and their contact information so everybody can stay in touch.
Cool.
And then I have a third brief public service announcement. Many of you know that that we've been working on map technology. And this is because we need to be able to find each other, plan routes. If there's an issue, if you're traveling and you just had some kind of a mechanical issue, you want to be able to find another Comanche driver or a recommended shop where you are. And so at this point, Thomas has pulled in the airplane database from all over the world, which is about 60,000. All of us Comanche pilots and or airplanes and then pilots. We do not have email addresses and phone numbers for everybody. And so we will be creating a form where you can update your information. And that way you get to be on the map. If we have, and we also have people from whom we have emails and or phone numbers and no addresses. To get on the map so you can find other people and be found yourself, you just update your information, and there it is. And there'll also be ways for people to put their businesses in, recommend their favorite shops, recommend CFIs. And that last one is critical. We have a lot of new owners coming in. We have airplanes that are being restored that were out of commission for a long time. So transition training is critical, and the transition training list is being created with Comanche experienced instructors. So if you are a Comanche experienced instructor or you have one you love, please send an email to Will Chapman, and I will put Will's email in the chat window as soon as I've stopped talking and started listening. Any questions about Oshkosh, about taking your airplane home to Lock Haven to see mom on Saturday, or about maps?
Can I ask one more question about Oshkosh?
Hans, if you've got the question, so do 50 other people. Go for it.
So you're planning to gather at a airport southwest of Oshkosh on Friday. What time are you planning to leave there to go to Oshkosh?
We're most likely going to be, and this is always weather dependent, we're pilots, most likely we'll be departing at noon or 1 o'clock, and that's TBD. So being on this list, you'll also be getting emails as the final countdown happens.
Okay. Thank you.
They've given us a 4 to 5 hour window, which is nice. And the discussion we had with them is we don't want to try to have people fly in trail to Oshkosh and fit into all of the other aircraft trying to follow the arrival procedure. And they said, yes, we don't want you to do anything dangerous. So get there, and as long as you can be in a window, we'll work with you to keep you together.
For twin arrivals, I got a question for that for anybody that's we were bringing in twins. Obviously 90 knots is a little slow for a twin. Do we normally just get dirty? Is that because this is my first time to Oshkosh?
Yep.
So the question is whether or not do we just get dirty there and do the 1800 feet or fly 23?
23, definitely all of us, even the 180s can fly at the 23 airspeed. It's
And be
less
sure to-
crowded up there. Oh, go ahead.
Be sure to have a lot of fuel because you could circle Green Lake. 2019, I circled Green Lake 2 hours and then was sent to Fond du Lac. I had to get gas. So be sure you have lots of fuel.
Right.
The plan was definitely to fill up prior to even starting the escapade.
Yep. And that's part of the reason we're going to have an assembly airport. It's optional, but you can assemble and get fuel, and all of that information will be available. But that's also why, like, register, make sure you have your email address, and then we'll be posting updates to Facebook and sending out emails so that everybody knows what's going on. I will say this one thing. Mark's referring to a notorious year when there was terrible weather for several days and this enormous, pile of airplanes assembled all around the area. And then suddenly they're like, it's open, and everybody went at once. And, just people were just circling. Essentially, it was like having everybody stuck in a hold, only it was somewhat less organized. It was a VFR hold, if you can imagine. So that was a year that will be down in history. Fortunately, there were no, as far as I know, there were no accidents, but it was exciting. People were posting pictures of their ADS-B screens, and it looked like, solid green.
And the bonus was after you held and you finally got the clearance, got up, lined up for 3-6. They were like, no twins, break out.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I couldn't believe it. After like 4 hours of circling Green Lake 2 times.
Yeah. Well, I am going to call it then. We are going to have a Comanche Zoom 2 weeks before. The head of parking at Oshkosh for Vintage Area, Randy Hightree, who's a Comanche driver, is going to host that Zoom. So register, come in 2 Thursdays before Oshkosh and hear Randy Hightree answer all your questions. Thank you for letting me take us off schedule. And I am so sorry, we're now 20 minutes late. I'd like to introduce our air conditioning Comanche Zoom this evening. This is no pun intended, a hot topic. And originally we had 2 innovators scheduled. And I just want to welcome PJ Medella, who is a very cool Comanche driver from Arizona. And he's been recreating the atmosphere of fly-ins and fun events out there. And he also has been working on an air conditioning unit that's going to be super cool. And then I'm also wanting to just introduce and thank 2 others. One is John Long, who has been has completed an install in his airplane of the Arctic Air system. And we have photos from John. We also have photos from Chris Cotton, who's done an install of the same unit using the same alternator. And then finally, we have James Gary Gray, who's done an Icy Breeze in his Comanche. So this all kind of happened at the last moment because Jeff Munford, whose unit is amazing. Those of you who came to the Martinsville, Virginia gathering got to see it. But Jeff had a tragedy and had to regretfully withdraw for tonight. So we're looking forward to more information about his innovative unit at a future time. So PJ, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you want to lead off? And then oh my goodness, and I apologize. So Greg, we also have the CEO of Arctic Air with us, and that's Greg Turton, and he is a really fun innovator. And the thing that we wanted to highlight is you can create stuff and sell them to the community, and we will be very happy to have them. And so Greg, Arctic Air is not a huge company, and so there's going to be a little bit about that story of how Arctic Air came to be selling, general aviation compressor-based air conditionings as well as the ice-based ones. So that concludes my prep for this.
And CJ, I just want to make sure y'all can hear me.
Greg, you are loud and clear, and welcome and thank you again.
Thank you.
So the planned order is to start with PJ because, stay with that original plan and then move on to talking about the Arctic Air installs. And we have photographs of installations in 2 Comanches, and then we'll move on to Icy Breeze. And this will sort of give people an overview of what's available for our Comanches, how much it costs, what the installation is like, what kinds of things you can run into, and how do they work. So just want to see if we've got PJ here. And thank you all for bearing with us as we've dealt with our technical issues. If we do, PJ, have we got you here? In that case, I am going to text PJ because it looks like he's having some technical difficulties. And I am just going to move right along. So John Long, do we have you with us? Goodness. All right.
I'm here.
Okay, John, you are. Super. Welcome and thanks for being with us tonight. So what we have here tonight is some of your photos and also some of the photos of the installation done by Chris Cotton, who couldn't be here tonight and is looking forward to watching the video later. But he and you installed the same Arctic Air unit. Pete has got some of the photos. That's the Icy Breeze install, I believe. And
That's the Arctic Air.
That is the Arctic. Yep. So, okay. So I am going to, so Pete's got your slides up, your photos up, and I am going to turn it over to you and to Greg to jump in and talk about your installation. I will say that one thing that was helpful is John actually ran into a few issues, and Chris Cotton did an identical install and does have a functioning unit that's working great that he loves. And so we've got the photographs of both. So what I'd like to do is, John, ask you to walk through your installation process, and then we'll also bring up Chris's installation process videos, and then come back to some of the troubleshooting you've gone through and ask Greg to talk a little bit at the end about how this unit came about. Does that seem like a plan?
Okay.
All righty. Great. Off you go. So,
okay. So I'm starting. I guess so. So yeah, this is a picture of the Arctic Air unit in my baggage compartment. I apologize for some of the clutter that's in the picture there. I think I was so anxious to take a picture that I didn't move some things. But in any case, as you can see, this is a Comanche 250, and the unit takes up about 1/4 of the floor space, weighs roughly 50 pounds, and it's really a pretty slick installation in the Comanche baggage compartment. What I did as far as the installation process started with making sure that I had enough amperage available to run the system. Prior to beginning the project, I had a 50 amp alternator, the Interav alternator. And after reading about this system and then talking with the woman at Arctic Air, they were talking about the system needing momentarily 40 amps at startup and then something around 30 or less when it was running. And so I determined that the 70 amp system would be sufficient, and upgraded to the 70 amp alternator. So that was actually the biggest part of my installation journey. Once that was done, installing, or really you can't even call it installing, but putting in the Arctic Air unit is super simple. And I say you can't call it installing because it's a portable carry along equipment. So it's not really installed in the airplane, at least not in my case. It is placed in the airplane and you hook up quick connect and quick disconnect connections, and you're off and running. So what you can see there as far as power, my airplane did not have an external power plug, and so I installed one, and that's what you see down. I don't know, whoever's running, if you could possibly zoom in on the picture. Is it possible to do that?
You can do it on your own screen. Put your fingers on it and pull.
I can do it. No, it's not my screen. Oh, well, anyways, if you look down at the lower left there, you can see a typical Piper external power plug. And that's what I installed the power port and then installed the plug. Whoops. If you can go back to the last slide there. Whoops.
I've got it here too, Les.
Is it Pete that's running the slides?
Because we had a complete network failure on Pete's end, we did a backup one. And so what we're running into, and my apology for the organization tonight, is because we were recovering from an unexpectedly complete network failure from one of our key recorders and hosts.
So let's see if it comes back here. If not, I'll just try to describe it from memory. Okay. All right. There we go. There we go. So in any case, that's the system in there. What you see is the typical Piper external power port that I've installed in the back wall of the baggage compartment. I put a Piper external power plug on the Arctic Air system. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful. And then just above that and to the left, right there, right there is where the, above there a little bit, there you go, right there is where the hot air exits the system and goes into the tail cone area of the airplane. And then up above, if you can scroll upward, up there is the cold air coming out, and I've got it vented through a flexible duct that then I've got squeezed. And then if you go on to the next picture, the picture that shows the back seat. There we go. So that black sort of trapezoid shape there is where the cold air comes out. And I found that to be a really great location because it doesn't blow straight at the back of the head of anybody that's in the back seat. It blows between their heads. And for those of us in the front seat, you feel the air blowing nicely on the back of your neck. So it really is a good location, and it blows a good amount of air. And then the last picture there, the middle one, yep, there you go. This is the controller for it. And I mounted it in the lower left of my instrument panel, just above where the switches are, in a place that long ago had a transponder in it. And so the controls for the actual air conditioner are that sort of multi-position button that's on the gray plastic controller there. And this is something that I found a little bit difficult to use. The interface is it's touchy. It's very touchy, that little button there. But once you kind of get used to it, you can do it. To me, a very important feature is just to the right of that, that big metal toggle switch right there that I put in, which is the control for a relay to completely provide power or kill power to the system. In my case, that's been really important because I found that little digital controller to be a little bit, well, for one thing, I had a defective one, which they have replaced. The new one does work. But with that, it's still, you have to have pretty small fingers to operate that little button. And it's nice to just be able to shut it on or off. So I would definitely recommend personally installing a switch controlled relay to bring power or take away power from the system. And then I know that I think Greg wants to talk about the system a little bit, and I can add some of the additional issue that I've had, or I don't think, CJ, did you say that Chris is here or not?
Chris Cotton was not able to join us tonight,
Okay.
but his installation photos are here.
Okay, so do you want me to talk about any other issues I've had, or wait till Greg has spoken, or?
I would say well, you mean with respect to the amperage troubleshooting and
right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think that it's really helpful to people to know that, you know, we've got one that's installed that's working flawlessly, and then we've got one where you're troubleshooting some issues, so that if, you know, we ran into it, we'd know what to look for and what to do.
Yeah, so that's my understanding is that this gentleman, Chris Cotton, has had his working without issues. I installed mine over the winter, and so obviously didn't get a chance to run it, although I sure tried with cranking up cabin heat on full and then running it and seeing what happened. But in any case, now that it's summertime and I'm really getting to use it, I've had a consistent problem of high amp loads, excessively high, even with low. You can control the speed of the compressor, and even with the compressor turned way down, like to speed 3, I'm seeing amp loads that exceed it by far what it should be pulling, and it's been a problem. So I'm working with Arctic Air to figure out what's going on. There may be a bad board, it may be the compressor, I don't know. In any case, long story short, I think that I will eventually be real happy with the system once the issues are resolved.
Awesome.
I'm happy to answer any questions, technical or otherwise, that anybody has.
CJ, I'll chime in. This is Greg Turton, if I can at this point.
Yes, please. Yep, by all means. And
Okay.
then I'll get to some of the questions in the chat window. So absolutely.
Okay. And I like seeing all the pictures of the installation and all. The one thing I'd missed seeing was the exit air out the tail section of the plane. One thing that would cause the amps to go up, and I know we're working with you on that, and the one thing that I'd say when we developed the air conditioner was to have it so that you could send it back to us if anything ever went wrong. We could change a board, we could change compressor, we could change anything in the air conditioner and not take your airplane down. The one thing that causes the amps, or one of the things that can cause the amps to go up, is if you don't have the exit air on the vent on the tail section there. We normally say a reverse scoop, which we say because then it looks like you got vents on this airplane.
Yeah, that's not my plane does actually have a reverse scoop on the belly.
Reverse scoop.
This one is a different airplane.
Okay.
So this is Chris Cotton's Comanche.
sometimes we've seen the wind shear cause a screen to come back so that wasn't getting exit air, or people would turn off their vents in the airplane. If you turn off the vents, the two ways to install this unit is if you have it installed like this picture in the luggage compartment here, it's taken, it's exhausting 200 CFMs of air, and you got to bring that in through the ram air system or through your vents. So you have to let air into the airplane to exhaust it, is what I would say. The other option is to put a duct. We have a duct we can put on the front of the unit and have ram air come into that and go through the unit. And that way you're not mixing the air. This type of installation right here is kind of a spot cooling because you're discharging conditioned air out of the plane. When we put the plenum on the front of the unit and have ram air come into the plenum and exhaust that, so the evaporator would be on the top coming out with cool air, which was going into that last picture you just saw. And then the condenser exhausting that hot air into the tail section of the plane is where I'm talking about. Is right now you're bringing out conditioned air in the front side of the unit. Move your mouse to the right. And there's vents on the front, on the bottom section of that. Those 3 screws, there's a plate that goes between the panels halfway. So the bottom section of the unit there is going to be exhausting through there. And that, we have a condenser. Unit is at 24 volts or 12 or 24 volts. I think this is 12 volts on all the Comanches seem to be for the compressor. The compressor
Correct.
and the fans. This unit is a 200 CFM unit. So it has 2 fans on the top, 2 fans on the back. I know you have the external plug, which works fine. We don't mind about electrical. We always have an electrical load analysis. At a 70 amp alternator, depending on what you're pulling in the airplane, you can run it on a 70 amp alternator. We have a variable speed compressor, and I'm glad to hear your comment about the toggle button, because I have a lot of times with the toggle button on the PLC screen to use is, sometimes you can hit the wrong side or the up and down button on there. So I'm glad to hear that. I like the installation of your panel there, and any problems, that's what I would think. Usually the amp draw is if you see the amps go up and the unit may shut off. We're seeing that because of airflow is what normally would happen.
Yeah, I know that's what I know. We talked about that and you mentioned that on the phone, but I mean, I've got a reverse scoop outlet. I feel plenty of air blowing out of there. I've got the vents open. I mean, I'm pretty well convinced that there's something wrong with the unit. I don't think it's
something, and we will be glad to take that and put it on the bench and test it here. And it could be a board problem, could be a compressor problem. So yeah, absolutely glad to take care of any issues there. We set the amps. You can set on the controller. We can set them so that once it gets to a certain amp draw, that it stops rising on the amps is how it works. So we can set the max amps to be 30 amps. It's really a soft start compressor that we use. So it doesn't really peak right at the front. It starts up at a mid-range on the compressor and then ramps up. And when we program it, that we can set the amps to about 30 amps. You can set the amps on running it up and down on the speed that goes from 1 to 20. on there, and that's really controlling the amps also.
Oh, and actually, I just want to note a couple of things. This is CJ again. So Chris Cotton did a very slightly different install, but had the same thing. I happened to be talking to both of them and relaying back and forth. And Cotton and John Long are both A&Ps. And what's cool is, and this came out just this afternoon when John and I were talking, Greg, your story about how the Arctic Airs came about, where somebody just wanted air conditioning for your Comanches, and you're like, well, we can probably try to figure this out. And your story about how it happened, which I'm dying to have you tell. John's actually got a similar one, because John, what is your, tell them about briefly about your side business with cranes and warehouses, because this is great.
Oh, well, yeah, just a funny coincidence that again, one thing leads to another, but years ago, and CJ, I didn't tell you the lead into how this happened, but years ago, I was actually involved in developing aerodynamics for heavy duty trucks for 18-wheelers, and applying aerodynamics to them in order to improve their fuel efficiency. And as a side to that, we figured out other ways to improve fuel efficiency for heavy duty trucks, was to figure out how to air condition the cabs with the engine off, so that the truckers could air condition the truck at night without running the engine all night. And then as a side to that, because we were involved with 12 and 24 volt air conditioning, I was approached by a steel mill who needed to cool the cabs of the overhead cranes inside the steel mill. And I worked with a company, or a couple of companies, that developed a system that does that. So as it happens, I'm also in the business of DC powered air conditioners, but mine are applied to overhead cranes inside steel mills. So that's a roundabout sort of strange coincidence.
Well, that is, it's interesting how you get into any business, in my estimation. This all started whenever I was having shoulder surgery years ago. And a company called, I think it was EB Ice, and they were pumping cold water over my shoulder. And I thought, this could work in an airplane. And I didn't want to pay the $25,000. I fly Cirrus. And I didn't want to pay for the installation and a unit, air conditioning unit for the plane. And I only needed it on the ground, was really what my thought was. So I took ice and put it in a cooler, and had an oil cooler at the time, and we pumped cold water through it. And that's what started I guess the original invention of the ice air conditioner. And we started making them in a Rubbermaid cooler, and then we started making our own coolers years after we started selling them. We've been doing it, I guess, 15 years, or I guess 18 years or so. And whenever the thing with the ice coolers they worked great. We put out cool air. It would plug into a cigarette lighter. You could use it in any plane. It was a pain to put ice in it, and it still is. And I tell people right up front, the problem is you're putting ice, and you got to stop by, and you got to have the ice and water to start it. And we do 3 different sizes, and we still sell the ice cooler today, the ice unit. Then I started having customers call back, and they said, we love the unit. We just don't want to have to go through putting ice in it. Can you make a real AC, or one with a compressor? And had a real good friend of mine at Marv Air that is in our little community. And we started making, I made the first one in a cooler, and it ran for about 30 minutes and burned the compressor up. And then I hired an engineer to design it, and that's where the RAC unit stands for real air conditioner instead of fake air conditioner. So that was kind of how we started off on making this unit with the compressor. And we make 2 different versions, or 2 different sizes, is a 200 and a 400, which is 200 CFM or 400 CFM. And one pulls a little bit more amps. And then we do a 12 and 24 volt unit. You know, we usually suggest that people have a 100 amp alternator. It all depends on their electrical load analysis, on how much all the other electrical components are pulling in their plane. So that's kind of how it started off. And it's just, it's been fun doing it.
What I think with the Comanche, the 100 amp alternator becomes a bit of an issue not because of the alternator, but because of the wiring, that you would end up having to redo quite a bit of wiring to accommodate that much load. In fact, in my case, when I put in the 70 amp, even though my analysis showed based on 27, 30, even a 40 amp startup load, that I'd be fine, out of an abundance of caution, I put in a 60 amp alternator circuit breaker. And the reason for that had to do with the wiring size. And so if you went to a 100 amp alternator, I'm sure it would more comfortably run the system, but it's also quite a bit more install because of the wiring.
I understand.
Yeah. And actually, Chris Cotton, who's the other A&P, who, for all you guys, now that he's not this anymore, I'm going to admit, he's been in on a bunch of our Comanche Zooms, including the ones on like flying and weather and ice. And he's actually an FAA enforcement guy, or was until recently. He's not anymore. But he also happens to be an A&P IA and a Comanche driver who's restored a 250 to beautiful. And he commented that he's like, I'm not sure, I think 70 might be our largest STC alternator. But he looked at the same thing that John did, which is the fact that the Arctic Air has kind of a cool feature with that soft start. And he said on his Comanche, when it starts up, you can see it's quick, he said, but you can see the amps come up. So that soft start he likes because it cushions that initial big spike. He thought that was pretty elegant. And again, with his 70 amp alternator, he said it's working great and he loves it. He did say, if you happen to be operating it in the air, make sure you turn that off as part of your landing checklist, because when you go to drop your gear, if that air conditioning is running, you may blow your circuit breaker. And so he said, make sure you turn off the air conditioning for landing.
Yeah, most of the modern avionics don't pull that much power, but the landing gear motor does. That I saw something recently showing that it pulls in excess of 20 amps at a certain part of the retraction and extension phase. And so, yeah, that's something to be aware of. But in my case, I placarded it for ground use only.
Right, and we kind of recommend for them to placard it for ground use only. They can decide if they want to use it, whatever the pilot decides. And like you said, I would turn it off whenever you start doing your landing check list. The nice thing is you can take it out of the plane in 2 minutes or less. When a lot of times whenever I fly with 4 people, we may not fly with the air conditioner because we have the luggage, etc. So that was one of the things, when I look at the pros and the cons of different units, everything from the ice unit being inexpensive to this unit being roughly $5,000, a little bit more when you install it. And then when you install in a Cirrus, it's about $25,000 to do a factory installed air conditioner. But the 70 pounds comes with taking it around all the time. So that was one of my wife's bags. So that was my, it's nice to be able to carry extra luggage when you want to.
So roughly a couple of questions from the chat window and some that are being texted to me. Would now be an okay time to pitch them out to you guys? So how many CFM can we expect?
On this unit, there's about 200 CFM coming, circulating in the airplane. The fan it's anywhere from 180 to 200 CFM.
And I'll say, from a user perspective, that is nice. It is I mean, it's not overwhelming, but it is enough. You know, that you feel a nice, it's a powerful little fan, and you definitely feel a nice little breeze on the back of your neck. That, again, I really think that once I get these kinks worked out, I think I'm going to really like this system. That being probably best, you know, the number one thing I would say is that it does deliver a good amount of airflow.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then-
And these really, the one thing we did was we used brushless motors on the compressors and the fans. And we also on shielded wire going up to the controller. Every so often we've had somebody say that it had some interference with the radio on there. And normally that was because the control wire was placed right next to the headsets or the antenna. Going through the plane whenever they routed it up to the front. So that's one thing, just trying to make sure we get the electrical lines all away from any antennas. You know, don't put them right next to it, or we've had some that would put them and tape them or zip tie them to the other communication lines or antennas, and that is not a real good practice.
So many of our Comanches have our batteries right behind the baggage area. So that ends up being a very convenient fact for installs. But we do have a 260B driver where the battery is up front and with the engine compartment. And he's wondering about the best way to do the install in a 260B, presumably for that very reason.
Well, and that we use a number 6 is what we usually suggest. If you know, when you're that close to the battery, could you change something? Probably so. By running that wire, for the electricity, how far you run those makes a difference. On, but the number 6 wire has been pretty much good. We started using it in the Cirrus. The Cirrus had the batteries up front, the CMU. All of it, so we kind of run to the front of the plane in that. So I think you'd be fine with that. Main thing I would say is routing it around any other cables going up there.
So stay away from your avionics wiring and your intercom wiring.
Yes.
I'm looking at John nodding like yes, definitely.
Yeah.
You would want to.
And I wish I had pictures of behind that back wall of the baggage compartment, because that's really, from an installation point, what makes it really nice is that it's so easy because the battery's right there. And also, at least in my airplane, there is an avionics tray that runs across the aircraft just behind the that access to the tail cone area. It's like a an avionics shelf, I should say, and I had very little on there, so that's where I mounted both the relay that takes away or gives power to the plug, and also the circuit breaker. So my circuit breaker is not in-flight resettable. If it pops, it's popped. It's back there. It's back in the back. But what that meant was that I did not have to run any long, big wires. So I don't have any wires longer than about 2 feet of that number 6 wire.
Nice. And Chris Cotton did run his wire up to the panel, so his breaker's in the panel. And so you can do it either way. And obviously that's a working config. For Terry Lindsay, who I think had to pop out, but we have plenty of B and C drivers with us, as well as the twins that are the B and C models. He asked, how do I install in a 260B with a different back seat and baggage compartments? So if you have a B, you have 2 child-size back seats. You can actually remove those back seats. In fact, some people with Bs do so because they like the open access to the baggage area without having to go in the side door, but they don't want those seats because they don't have kids, and just use it all as baggage space. And so in that case, Here's where I'm not an A&P, so I'm just going to look at John and all of the other A&Ps in the room with us. There is a wiring channel that comes down from your panel and it goes under the the passenger seat, and our wiring bundles already run back that way. And since what we're talking about, I guess that wouldn't be a good thing to use because that's where the wiring's going now. If you were doing it in a B, how would you run from the firewall back to the baggage area there, or the 6 seats? Anybody want to comment? George Richmond's in, and he may know that off the top of his head. So I think what we will do is get the answer to this question and put it in a frequently asked questions when we post the video. Second question is for Mark Sullivan, who has a twin Comanche. Do you need 2 70 amp alternators in the twin? Because the original alternator conversion for the Twinco was 2 40 amp internav alternators.
My answer would be, if you're asking me, I would say no. That it sounds to me like you've got an 80 amp supply, with the exception of during an engine failure. But I would leave that up to whoever's doing the job to say. I'm not familiar enough with the electrical system on the twin Comanche to say.
Cool. George Richmond, I don't know if you're still in here, but as you're an A&P and drive a twin, do you want to comment on your best guess? Or if you're not able to unmute, feel free to just stick a note into the chat.
I was going to say, if I'm not sure who's running the slides, but if you can go back to the slide that shows my baggage compartment. I wanted to point out a few things. Okay, there. And if you can just zoom in on the box, the white box. Great, perfect. So they talked about removing and installing it, like if you want to take it out, and it is a pretty easy setup. So there are basically, let's see,
pictures of the apartment. She's on speakerphone. You just swipe it to the left.
There's basically 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 approximately connections to make when you want to take it in or out. One is, of course, the plug, the big Piper external power plug you unplug. And then just below that, just a couple inches below, right there, is the condensation line. Now, the way that I did it is that's routed through the back wall of the baggage compartment, and I have it running out to my reversed air scoop in the belly, so that any condensation would actually drip down into the outflow air from the tail cone area. And I put a quick disconnect. You can't barely see it in this picture, but at the very lower left, right there, there's a quick disconnect for the condensation line. And then, of course, where you see the outflow of the hot air right there, in my case, I simply pull that out, and then I've got a blanking plate that goes over that space. And then the last thing is the plug down in the lower right, up a little, that gray cord right there. Yeah, so that gray cord is what connects the unit to the digital controller, which is up in the instrument panel. And that plugs in to the Arctic air. And so you unplug that. As it happens, it's on the far side. It is a little bit awkward to reach when you have it placed where I have it in the back left corner, but it's not too bad. And so all in all, I would say that you can take this thing in and out of the plane in about under 5 minutes. Is pretty realistic. And so there's 50 pounds and about a quarter of the baggage space.
Nice.
And just so the real reason that all those plugs are on the other side of the unit is the Cirrus baggage store is on the other side of the plane. So that was really the reason that we had those on the other side. But he's right that they're a connection, and that's why we put them on there. I like that on the line, the condensation line. We always like to put a quick connect on that. And when we ship the unit to you, we have a duct that you can twist to make it. I noticed he changed the ducts on this coming out to the front of the unit, and can't tell on the rear. We give you two different plastic diffusers, and we have a duct that goes between there that you can kind of twist it, and it will go from like 3.5 to 5 inches or so in diameter.
Yeah, that duct, it just doesn't work in this. It doesn't have.
Yeah,
it
doesn't
just-
have the bend radius for what you have
Exactly.
here.
Exactly. It
That's
doesn't
right.
have the bend radius. It can't make the turn that we need to make. And the only way to make your duct work would be to cut a hole in my hat shelf, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
So,
And I noticed one of the other pictures on the other plane, somebody, did they make that out of fiberglass? The units, it looked like they put two diffusers on it and it was a fiberglass.
Oh, let me just say one thing before you switch over to that, because I just want to finish on the removal and install. One thing I thought of, in my case, I wanted to have something holding this unit in there. In case I got into really heavy turbulence or something, I didn't want the thing to be able to fly around. And so you can't see it in here. It's just impossible to see in the pictures, but I actually have two quick connect 3/32 inch steel cables that go from two of the upper corners of the unit itself, and they go down to one of the baggage tie down mounts. And so with those in there, and I actually have carabiners on them, so they're quick connect. And with those in there, there's no way that it could fly up or fly around. I think even if I went inverted.
That's right. And the other idea was the handles that we put in there. That was kind of the idea, was on those handles, you can tie it down through the handles also. And we always tell people to tie it down as they would luggage in there. Now, personally, I don't usually tie it down. I think it's a good idea to. But the tying down luggage and all, I don't do as much as I probably should.
We might or might not be guilty and resemble that remark, Greg. Well, this is cool. And John, thank you for pointing out some of the finer points of the install in the Comanche, because that's going to help everybody who starts looking at solving this problem. Knowing some of what you had to think through and run into, and some of the, just how to fit it in here. Greg, we actually have the later model Comanches, because they added the 5th and 6th seats, the baggage compartment door is on the other side like the Cirrus. And so it's yeah, so we actually have, we swing both ways. So that's,
both ways.
yeah. And just real briefly, John, would now be a good time to jump over to Chris Cotton's photos for a second? Great. Okay, cool. Pete, if you can swing over to Chris Cotton's install photos for a sec, I just want to point out the louvers. And so those are, back up 1 second, because that photo are the louvers sitting on the bench getting ready. And then if you want to just go ahead to the photo that showed the entire airplane, or maybe it was a video, I forget which. You can actually see. You know what? I don't know what they are. It's a good question, but Pete's circling the tail of 6561 Pop. And those vents are only on that one side of the airplane, but it was something that he innovated as an extra way to get the air out. And
What he's done, replaced an inspection port.
yep.
And we've always recommended the inspection plate because it was not a structural component of the airplane. And that's where a lot of times I like the reverse scoop. I like the looks of his on that with the paint and everything else he's done. Sometimes I worry about when the vents are going down like that, if there's going to be a wind screen coming by. Having the air when, you think if you're going 180, 200 miles an hour, the air coming by there, if it's able to create a negative pressure behind it and suck the air out, it helps, a lot.
Yeah. Well, what I can tell you is that Cotton said that he's in Houston, and it's he's got the same 70-amp plane power alternator that John Lon installed to enable the installation of Arctic Air in his, and he has the same unit. I sent him the same link that John texted me, and he's thrilled. So whatever it is about that install.
I might want to meet him because my daughter just moved to Houston and she's working with Exxon. So I might have a reason to go out there and see him. And he's got the Canon plug there in his unit. And I guess what he's got around the unit is there looks like some plastic or whatever around the unit there. Not quite sure what that is.
Yep, nor am I. Don't know.
Okay.
So, and there he is as it's happening. And you can see, Pete, if you go back to 3 for 1 second, you can see the open access port at the tail of 6561 pop there to the upper left of the photo. So there it is. And then Pete, if you want to go up to 2 for a second. And that's just a view into his baggage area. In his case, when he was getting all this set up and working on it, he actually removed his baggage door. John, did you do the same thing when you were installing, or did you work with the door still in? Yep. So, and then
on that on that picture right there, it has the plastic piece that we send with the unit, and it doesn't look like he has a quick disconnect on his drain line in that unit. But that the white plastic on the back bulkhead is the one we send with the unit. And that plastic duct connecting them is the one we send with the unit. And he was able to clip it. But I don't see a quick disconnect on the drain line on that.
And mine looks just like his, except that I omitted that plastic square.
Did you use our duct and the
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And his duct, it looks like he ran it through ours, and to the left side of the bulkhead there's a white, and it looks like he flared it out by twisting it on there, which is great. And then I see the wiring running on the floor up to the front of the airplane, it looks like, for the 12 volts. So yeah, the positive and negative, it looks like.
Yep. And then if we pop up to number 1 real quick, I think that was just a photograph. The same thing we were looking at, just a little bit closer. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions before? I wanted to ask Greg just to talk a little bit about how it works, since you and an engineer designed it.
No, that's right. The unit in the center of the unit, right there where the 3 screws are across, is a panel. Right above that, right there is those 3 screws there. There's a panel going across the unit that kind of blocks it off on the compressors on the bottom, evaporator in the top, and the drain pan, of course, on the evaporator. The fans are got a fan in the back and the fan on the top, and then the vents on the back to come through the coils as it comes through to go up to the evaporator using 410A on the refrigerant on there. These have a 12-volt compressor, a variable speed compressor on there. And whenever we originally designed the unit, I had all the airflow completely wrong, really. But it did work for a little while. And that's whenever I got the mechanical engineer that just works on air conditioners, and he does it for more air. And Andy did a great job, and pretty much he taught us how to build them whenever we originally started there. And once we got through the first 10 or 12, I guess originally, that our first sale really was out to Arizona, and we sent the units out there, and we had tested them here, and we're in Georgia, and it gets hot, I thought. And they called me, and it was 20 units, and they bought the units, and they called me back and said they were cutting off on high temp. And I was like, they can't be. There's no way. And I told them, I said I would come out there. And the next week we flew out to Arizona, and that's the hottest place on earth, I think. And I told them, I said, you know, it's 120 degrees out here on the tarmac. They probably don't work. I said, send them back to us, and we'll make sure we get them right. And we, at that point, we changed some of the coils in there, and went to a 4-row coil, really, and engineer worked on it, and we sent them all back. And we're still getting those units. We still work with them today. That's been 15 years ago, I guess, 12 years ago. And we got one in the other day, and it was flight school out there that we still service them. And that worked. And he asked me, he said, why are you're going to lose money on this deal? And I said, well, if they'll work in Phoenix, they'll work anywhere. And that was kind of how we got to the unit today. And that was really our idea. We wanted them portable. Being a portable electronic device, the pilot can decide what works on the plane, if they want to use it on ground use only, etc. Some people would say it's a minor alteration. Some want to fight that and get a 337, have a DER sign off on it. And if they want to pay for that, that's perfectly fine to do on it. But it's kind of a gray area, I guess you'd say, that some people say it's a minor alteration, some do not.
What did you do, John? Minor or logbook?
Minor alteration.
Yep.
For me, the biggest thing was just the install of the, actually I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, and would really recommend, really happy with the way, if I can, really happy with the way I did it. Because like I said, I did not have an external power plug, but now I do. So I provided, both the power source for the air conditioner and an external power port at the same time.
Right.
It's worth noting that the Arctic Air unit does not come with a plug. You have to provide your own plug. And so since you have to do it, and it has to be a heavy duty plug, that external power plug, this typical Piper type, is available from Aircraft Spruce for, I want to say, like $25.
Right.
And the external power port, the female side of it, is like another $20. And so really, to me, that's the way to go.
And I like your plug there. We probably usually recommend a Canon plug, which was in the last slide, I guess. The Canon plug is kind of got a ring on it that screws down. but especially if you don't have an external source on a plane, you could easily jump it off from having another plug that you can plug in there to, especially being 12 volts, that you can hook jumper cables to. I mean, really, on the Cirrus, we have an external plug, and I find it very useful to have because I've had to use it several times just to be able to jump the plane off.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the Canon plug there. And the reason they don't come with a plug is the Canon plug is pretty expensive. Matter of fact, I think it's too expensive. It's a nice plug, military grade plug, and you can get all kinds of plugs that will work on this, and you can get them for like $25 or whatever. So I think it was very good to leave that up to if somebody wanted to save some money on something they could.
Yeah. Couple of quick questions. How does air get into the unit?
On the
John?
front side of for the discharge, it comes in on the front. There's a grate on the front, and that's the exhaust air. But it's got to come into the plane somewhere. So normally it's coming in from the ram air into the plane. And one of the problems we've had is people would cut their vents off. Well, if you do that, it's almost like putting a dirty filter in an air conditioner. It's blocking or restricting that airflow, which is causing the amps to go up. So the two places for the restriction, we're concerned with the airflow over the coil there and out the rear of the airplane. So if you have a windscreen, or some people have not put vents at all on the tail section of the airplane, and they would see it run for 10 minutes and then build up the temperature because it's building up the heat and the pressure in the tail section of the plane. The cool air is circulating in the cockpit, coming in the back side of the unit, and then just turning and going up right there, and just circulating the interior air. If you ever put a plenum on the front of the air conditioner, it's about a 6-inch box really out the front there where that tape is. You could bring ram air right into the unit. That would be taking completely outside air and exhausting that outside air, which would make it run more like a regular air conditioner where they put the compressor on the outside of the airplane or house or whatever. And then you would just recirculate the cool air. Ideally, it's a little bit more of an installation process, but that's the ideal solution.
Cool. A couple of quick questions and then, okay.
See, the typical amp draw when you're running it, I would say would be 38 to 40 amps. Unless we set that to be lower, you can reduce that, but it's going to reduce your cooling too, so it's reducing how hard the compressor is working, since it's a variable speed compressor.
So there's something that you touched on. I'm confused about that, because the literature on the website says that it runs at 20 to 27 amps, I believe. And when that was kind of the key to our setup, was I was told that it would peak at 40 at startup and then it would stabilize at 30 or less when it's running. But you're saying 38 to 40, when I was thinking that.
Well, and I'm thinking about the 24 volt unit really is what I'm thinking about. The unit there, we can run the unit. You can control how fast you run the speed control on the unit with the toggle switch there. You can run it as low as 15 amps, and that you can kind of set that on the speed control with the toggle there.
So what should it be on the 12 volts or on a 14 volt airplane? What should the running amps be?
It depends on where you set the speed control on there. If you set it wide open, it's going to be somewhere around the 36, 38 amps on there. Our literature could be wrong on that.
Yeah, the literature, I'm actually looking at it right now. And for this unit, it said, this is always the fun thing about running a small company, right? For this particular unit, it's stating the plane will give us, let's see, yeah, Arctic Air can control the amps you draw at a low of 19 amps and a high of 27 amps. Startup peaks at 40 amps for a split second and levels off at 25 amps. If the plane will give us 27 amps of power at 12 volts, the unit will put out 7,000 BTUs of air conditioning. And if the plane will give us 19 amps of power, the unit will put out 5,000 BTUs of AC.
Okay, I may have been incorrect when I said 38, then it may be 27 on that.
Gotcha. But I think that influenced our two ANPs and their decision to go with the 70 amp plane power alternator. Because I think, John, were you the one that said the rule of thumb is no more than 80% of amp rated current?
I think there's actually an article about that, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. How much power it's drawing. And I think that Chris said that he was seeing like 25, 27 amps.
That is correct. And Chris wrote back and said he did do it like you as a minor. And given his given his employer, I think that's a pretty good indication that in the Comanche you can do it as minor. He said that his amperage was 20. He was drawing this from memory, but he said he's seeing 20 to 25 amps, and loves the unit. It's cooling. So, and he said he's gonna use it tomorrow and give us a hot Houston report tomorrow that we can put as a note into the Zoom chat stuff. So expect a couple of answers. So a couple of things. PJ Vanilla has been peacefully or patiently waiting, and he is an innovator who's done a lot for the Comanche community. There's still a bunch of questions in the chat window, and this initially started out as a Comanche Zoom really focused on some of the innovation stuff coming out of the Comanche community. And then a couple of folks with, the Arctic Air solutions that are, either like John, really, really happy when it's running and just running through some issues, or Chris Cotton, who's got an install where he's thrilled and he's in Houston. And then Gary Gray, who's done an Icy Breeze install, said, hey, would you like us to talk? We kind of started to wonder if this was going to turn into a 2-session Comanche Zoom. And we kind of think it will, because there's a lot to cover and a lot of interest. So let me ask this. And then, of course, just to make it really good, we had this complete network failure at Pete's End just as we were coming in. And so we had 3 public service announcements. So we've got about, 50 people still in the room with us right now? And yep. And so this is a audience poll. Are you guys up for continuing so that we can address the questions? And what we really want to do is PJ's work is amazing. It's really innovative, and he's quite an engineer. So, and it's a different solution that's complementary to Arctic Air, which is kind of like, major compression, serious stuff. So what I'd like to know is, first of all, can I have you guys just throw well, PJ, would you be willing to try to do an overview and then return to do a deeper dive? Would that make sense for what you're talking about? And you'll need to unmute.
Sure. I think we can keep mine very simple for the time being, and then I can do a deep dive on the next session, so I can show pictures of what I've done. maybe that'd be a better way to go.
Okay, that sounds great. Partly because you're in development, and so literally week to week, you're getting updates as stuff happens. Although, of course, you're also dealing with the COVID slowdowns of materials and turnarounds from
Yes.
your suppliers. So it's pretty exciting. Would you be willing to allow me to whip through a couple of the last install questions people had from the Arctic airs? And are you sort of finding out what you're likely to run into as we start installing your stuff in our Comanches? Has this been interesting as somebody who's on both the pilot and owner end and hey, I'm making something that you all might want?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because so with mine, I thought of two options. One, make it portable so the installation is very minimal. But also watching the clips right now kind of gave me some idea how the fixturing needs to be. And the other option I thought of was, can we do a 337 on this so you can put the unit behind the luggage compartment right by the battery rather than do it in the luggage area, so you're not occupying that luggage storage with the air conditioning unit. So those are the two options that I was thinking about, but I'm not a professional at this. Certainly I would love to get some help from somebody who's got the experience to see how we can get the 337 approved on these. So we've got the options to go both routes. So, you know, we'll see what the demand looks like. If there's a lot of interest for the units, I think it's worth doing the 337. So it's a permanent fixture. But if the demand's not there, maybe portable is a way to go.
And what is the expected weight of your unit, PJ?
So it's still in the development progress as we speak. I think the unit that I have now does about 28, 29 CFM, and I'm trying to get that right around 35 to 40 CFM. So they just shipped the units yesterday. I've been on it. It was supposed to be shipped 2 weeks ago, but it's on the DHL as we speak. Hopefully I should have it in another week. Once I get it, I should be able to just, you know, bench test it and see what the speed differences are on the CFM. And if everything works good for me, it's just a matter of disconnecting 2 cables and 4 mounting screws. And I put everything back. All the ducting work I've already done on my aircraft. So I should be able to see a different, you know, cooling speed. And as the other gentleman mentioned, is it, I forget the name who did the Arctic Air demo. You know, running these air conditioners in Arizona and Phoenix heat, boy, I tell you, they're working pretty hard considering how small envelope they're sitting in. So it's a challenge to get them to cool down here, but in some of the other parts of the country it may not be a problem. But for me, I felt like I needed that extra air to circulate and get the airplane cabin cool down faster.
So, and what is the approximate weight of your expected unit?
So yeah, that was the original question. So once I put in an order, I'm going to say come from China, probably 2 weeks, roughly.
Oh, I'm sorry, the actual physical, like kilograms or pounds, my bad.
That is about 20 grams is the shipping weight that they estimated. And then as far as the actual weight of the unit, I want to make sure I read through my note. It's no more than, I want to say it was 10 pounds roughly, just under actually, of the actual unit.
So it's putting out a remarkable number of feet per minute for a 10-pound unit. And Greg and John, what's the approximate weight of the Arctic Air, which is putting out 2,000 CFM?
45 pounds is about what the unit weighs. It's 45 pounds. On a compressor like that is the main weight of the unit. And it's putting out 200 CFM, not 2,000. Just so
sorry, my bad. So good correction. And PJ, say again your CFM.
It's very low. Mine is only around 28. Right now it's sitting at 28.5. Possibly can get up to 35 with the higher fans that I'm asking them to put on. Now, I don't know if your CFM, are you talking about the BTUs perhaps, the 2000?
No, the use is going to be about 9,000 BTUs.
Okay,
And
okay.
200, yeah. We're using the computer, the fans are like a computer fan that we're using, high volume computer fan type thing.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I misspoke, PJ. That was my fault saying 2000 when Greg corrected me. It's 200 CFM.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
PJ.
that sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I think it would be a great idea if we were to compare the both units side by side and kind of get a better perspective of, you know, how much are they actually truly blowing. If Greg's the fans are higher output, I would love to exchange my fans to those and actually get a better output out of it.
Right. And yeah, and we'll be glad to compare the units, do a side-by-side comparison or whatever.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not the engineer or how I designed this. I was just able to contact a company that's been working with me for my needs. So I think working with you folks would probably the best we can do and come up with a unit that, you know, caters to everyone.
So,
right.
PJ, are you able to see your overview slides here on the screen right now? Because I'm looking at them and it's pretty cool.
I am looking at it. So that, like I said, the footprint on this is, you know, 350 by 260 by 180 millimeters. If you want to, you know, convert that into inches, you're hardly looking at maybe 10 inches at the most, 12 inches by, you know, 10 across. And then it sits about another, you know, 10 to 11 inches tall. And that's the footprint of it. I should convert that from metric to inches on the next show so people have a better idea.
Sounds good. And you can just say, go to slide 1, 2, 3, or 4, PJ, and
there you go. So if we can go back to slide 2, it has a little bit of a verbal description of what we're looking at. So as Greg mentioned, the potentiometer that's on the system that controls the speed of the fan, the higher you go, the more amps it's going to draw. So I run mine at full blast and I'm hardly drawing 10 amps on my system. And this is with having your airplane on, without airplane on, it seems to draw less than that. Once it's up and running, it actually drops down right around 7.5 amps continuously. So that's pretty low, you know, amperage drop off of your existing system. So if somebody's out there don't have to spend money on upgrading their alternator, this might cater to them quite well.
I have to say, it is so cool to look at 3 innovators, Greg Turton, PJ Medella, and John Long, sitting right there on my screen. All 3 of you have other businesses that you do. All 3 of you have created, you know, AC solutions. John for your, you know, the crane cabs, and then PJ, you for our Comanches, and then Greg, you for all of our GA, and I guess PJ's will be for all GA. And I just, you know, part of the reason that I was excited about putting this together is to note that we have great engineers and pilots and owners who come out with things that change our lives. So I'm just super happy to see all of you and to hear a little bit about how these stories came about, because we got a product, but you're doing it almost as a side business, and it's something that benefits all of us. I did hear, Greg Turton, that one of your biggest orders was the Border Patrol putting them in trucks.
Yes.
Okay.
Just maybe I'm tattling, but just saying. So PJ, let me not interrupt you, but I wanted to just mention that little potential fact.
Sure. Well, you know, I was kind of forced into wanting to investigate into air conditioners. As Greg mentioned, you know, being in Arizona, flying in and out of here, even, you know, March, April months, gosh, it's pretty darn hot out here. And so, you know, I've tried the ice chest and I've tried the coolers, and, you know, it's a lot of work to manage those and make sure it's all set right. And then the thing melts. So I finally said, forget all this. I got to look at an air conditioner system. And I've been working with these guys almost for about 1.5 years. I went seen them in China, and that's how this product is, you know, coming alive now. So hopefully it'll get better and better. So there's a 12-volt system and also a 24-volt system as well. With the 24-volt, your output of the CFM is actually better, double than what I'm showing here. Unfortunately, no, with the Comanches, the 180s, I'm not too sure with the 250s. We're at the mercy of that, 14 amp system, so our 14-volt system. But I think the product is very good. It definitely does what it's supposed to do. I'm not very disappointed. I definitely think for the Arizona or the summer cities, it would be better to have a little bit higher CFM than what I'm listing down there. So 40, 45 should be good. And then the third, the last slide, CJ, is just basically kind of showing you how you can set it up on a portable situation. If somebody wants to, it does have a drain plug on the bottom. If you connect that and dump it underneath the airplane, you're good to go. And I'm trying my next phase of this. If somebody does want to do it portable, we're trying to come up with, is it possible to just plug in and out of a USB, as long as the USB outlet is capable of putting out at least 15 amps of power, then you should be able to just plug this into your USB outlet and you're good to go. But currently I have mine set up through a breaker. I put a 15 amp breaker. It's got its own line by itself, and it's connected to the Avionics. As soon as I flick the Avionics on, this thing can go live right away. When you flip it off, it turns off. The unit that I have in my airplane does not have a controller to set the temperature, but the units that I ordered does have it, so you can set the temperatures higher, low, as well as the fan speeds on the controller. And you can mount that controller up front by the panel if you like, so you can make it a little remote controller for it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
more to come in terms of how I installed it and how I can make this work.
Great. Well, we were looking forward to doing a second session on air conditioning. As your product moves forward and you get your delivery, everybody, Garmin, S-Tech had delays in getting things available. The shoulder harness folks, we've got a group buy special going on for shoulder harnesses and webbing. They had delays, and so I wasn't at all surprised when you told me there was a little bit of a delay in getting equipment. Greg, is that affecting Arctic Air at all? Because one of the questions in the chat window was, are they in stock, ready to ship?
Ours are, we build them to order. We have most of the parts in stock. Normally it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for us to get the units out. But we usually try to have some in stock, but it's always hard. Right now we have had some delay issues with some of the controllers, and normally we've been able to get them out within 2 weeks.
Greg, I have a question going back to something you mentioned quite a bit earlier, had to do with that you could limit the amount of amps. For me, that would be great if I knew that there were a limit. Let's say, if like I would feel much more comfortable if I knew that it wasn't going to pull more than 35 amps.
Right.
How do you do that? And could it be something that you could just, that people could say, hey, I want mine just as with the 35 amp limit?
We can set that in the controller there, and engineer we'll be glad to talk to you later on that and how to do that.
Okay.
That'd be cool. And I think that what you're suggesting, John, would be a big relief to many of us flying, airplanes designed. We're a Car 3 airplane. We were certified in the 50s, and so we, many of us have got generator to alternator conversions, with those plane power alternators being very popular. And in fact, it's kind of tying into a question from Mark Sullivan, who has a beautiful turbo twin. He said, I've got a forward battery. I'm a PA30B. Can I install a second battery near the AC unit, for example, a CB25 dedicated to the AC drawing charging current only from the main bus? John, that
Cool.
might, for our engineers and AC people.
Sorry, I missed that.
I don't know if that's a John question, John Long question, or if it's a Greg Turton question, or if we have other A&Ps like George that might want to comment.
Ask that question one more time.
Sure. It's from Mark Sullivan, who, by the way, is critical to the certification of one of the autopilots for Comanches, but he is not part of their, he's a very technical guy. I know him, but he's officially the operations head and an attorney. He says, I've got a forward battery. He's got a PA30B. Mark, do you want to just jump in and ask your question, or do you want me to read it? I'll go ahead and read it then. He said, can I?
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, the question I have is, I have inter-av alternators, which is the original conversion. They're 40 or 50 amp. They're not big, but there is a balance issue on the twin Comanche and with the inter-avs. It seemed to me the simple solution would be, because I've got the useful load, to put a CB25, the little battery they use like on Cessna 172s. And by the way, I have a forward battery, of course, my main battery. They have a CB25 aft of the baggage compartment. And so a short wire to the air conditioner, and then just strictly run charging current, back from the bus, just charging that battery. So the initial draw, et cetera, would be on the battery, not on my main, on the main system. I don't know if that would work or not, and if that would solve some of these draw issues.
That's
also,
a cool idea.
The issue of, I'm also concerned about, obviously, anything, I'm going to be in Florida and it's hot and humid and horrible, so I'll be running it if I'm at low altitude, but I'll be constantly worrying about the landing gear coming down. So it'd be worth it to me to carry 25 pounds of a second battery, just so I know I'm not touching my main battery for my landing gear.
It's interesting. I guess my only input would be, first of all, I think that would be a question for an IA who would be willing to sign off on that, because to me that would be a major alteration. But from my air conditioning design, other life, and dealing with trucks, we found that having a battery in the system is great because it acts almost as a shock absorber when it comes to the electrical side of things, and can provide extra power when needed. It acts as a buffer. And so to me, that sounds like a great solution that would be up to somebody who'd be willing to sign off on it.
Yeah, because it seemed we could even put a diode in there so that it would only be one way. So even if you got a huge draw, it wouldn't affect the main system.
Hey, Mark, you can always add a ram or a turbine underneath the plane.
There you go.
A simple $100, $200, 25 amp battery might be the answer.
Yeah. And by the way, we have a space shuttle engineer weighing in here, and Marty. Well, anyways, somebody for NASA. So, yep.
TJ, you planning to share your screen like that?
No, in fact, I don't know what's going on.
I don't know either. Is this my screen?
Something strange has happened to our Zoom session. Are you
Let
guys
me
able to
just-
hear me okay?
Ben's screen is being
I hear
shared.
you.
We're looking at Ben's screen.
Okay.
I'm looking at Pete Morris's screen.
Yeah.
Pete Morris's name is up there, but Ben is the one who's sharing the screen right now.
Yeah, I would say today has been the day of network glitches. It's been interesting. So I will say that Mark and John and Greg, since this would benefit everybody, and Marty is definitely capable of weighing in on this.
There we go.
Looks like we're normal, well, sort of normal. We have a couple of DERs and A&Ps that are ANPIAs. And in fact, we have a couple of DER ANPIAs with Comanches. PJ, welcome back. I think that the meeting did a partial bounce, so sorry about that. The thing we could do is we could set up a consult. I'm inclined to call a gentleman named Josh Svenningson, who has, I think, 20 STCs and 80 field approvals and is an IA with a Comanche, and ask him about that second battery idea and see whether it's something that we can make happen. Would you guys all be interested in that conversation if we set it up?
I'd be glad to.
John, you want to
Hey,
come in on it just for the?
See, I've got something to say about that. You know, if you start getting into electrical things, the thing that's supplying the highest voltage is what's going to take over the load. So even with a second battery, the alternator is still going to try to take the load, not the battery. So you're going to have to put a very large wire still in there to accept that load.
Yep.
It's more complicated than what you really think.
Gotcha. And who's 7736 November?
Chuck.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's a really helpful comment.
I'm afraid I mean, it's a long discussion that we would have to do this, and I don't think this is the appropriate place to do that.
Yep, absolutely. What we're offering to do is to just pull together a discussion, because it's something that just keeps coming up. How do we run these AC units? And in Mark's case, there's a lot of twin drivers with this same kind of, you know, one of the things Chris Cotton noted is he said, you know, make sure that this is off for landing so that your gear comes down.
CJ, this is Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy.
How you doing? Listen, I talked to Cliff today about the alternators.
Yep.
And he told me, he said, I don't see why we couldn't get a 337 or STC for it. And he said he didn't think it'd be but about 1 or 2 wires that had to be changed if you had the digital regulator. But he told me to call Zach, and I called Zach, never to get back. He said he would probably be the one to answer that.
Okay, well, if Cliff Waluski certainly knows our fleet as well as anybody in the world, so that's wonderful.
Well, he said he didn't think it would be a problem to up it up to even to 100 amp alternator. He said you might have to change 1 or 2 wires. You had to have the digital regulator though, and I've got a digital regulator on mine because they had put it when I put the backup alternator on it.
Right. So this is good. We have a couple of key solutions that are coming out here. One is for, you know, Arctic Air, and I'm assuming, PJ, I don't know if this will apply to yours because it's smaller, but adding that, you know, governor or whatever you call it, so that we're not going over, say, 35 amps draw. And then Mark's idea, which Jimmy, it sounds like you and Cliff also just discussed of, did you discuss the second battery, Jimmy?
No, we didn't discuss second battery. We were
just
talking,
going to 100 amp regulator.
Yeah. Well, I talked to 3 of my friends at AIs and a cousin of mine that's A&P, and they didn't know. I got on the internet, couldn't find. And you know me, when I've got a question, I'm gonna call Cliff.
I do.
And so that's when I called him, and we talked about it for about 30, 45 minutes. And he said he just didn't see a problem. But he told me, he said, Zach's the one. He said, Zach can tell you off the top of his head.
Yep. Yep. Zach Grantwood. Yeah, he would know.
Yeah. So.
Super. John Long, just want to thank you. John just mentioned he has to sign off, and he'll be reporting back probably when we come back to highlight PJ's progress in his unit. PJ's is showing that you actually may be able to take the edge off with quite a remarkably small unit that's drawing less. And the reports I've gotten from one other person who's running the Arctic Air that they love it, is that this is something that can really change your life if you're in a hot, high humidity climate. A couple of other comments from the chat window, if that's okay. So Greg, you are now representing Arctic Air solo, no John anymore. And actually, so I'm just going to start going through the comments. I do this mostly because anybody who's dialed in won't be able to hear it otherwise.
CJ, can I say something real quick?
PJ, definitely.
Yeah. So about the amperage draw, as I mentioned, I connected mine through a breaker. So I gave myself 15 amps. So if the unit ever goes beyond that, it's going to trip the breaker and it'll shut the unit off. You know, so that's a little safety feature that I put into it. So if you don't even want past 10 amps, if you want that, you just connect that to a 10 amp breaker and you'll achieve the same thing.
I like it. Greg, what's your thought on that? You were thinking about doing it through the controller. Should we just, if we don't want it to go over 35, do we just go 35 amp breaker?
No, I don't think so. I think we need to restrict it on the unit.
Okay.
And I'd left for just a minute, so I'm sorry.
No worries. We have many people who cook dinner during these. This is casual. And you definitely aren't the first or the last. So Jacob was wondering, what's the scoop back by the elevator? Is that factory and is it required for the Arctic air?
Mm-hmm. It's not a factory scoop, I do not think, but it is required to have a vent to get rid of the heat for the Arctic air.
Neat. And is it, and you had mentioned earlier that you, oh, go ahead.
Was that me?
I'm not sure. I thought it was it PJ that was going to weigh in or?
Nope. No, you know what? I need to shut this, mute myself. Here we go.
So the FAA approval basis has been discussed. That was, it's a minor, unless you want to do something more or prefer to get a 337. But with an FAA employee doing it as a minor, looks like for Comanches, it's a minor. Is that fair to say?
I think
go ahead.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. We've discussed how air gets into the unit. That's a grill on the front. We are exploring the twin situation. As far as being in stock and ready to ship, they are custom built, about a 2-week lead time usually, Greg?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you happen to know?
One thing
go ahead.
Thing I'd like to go ahead and say too is the ice units that we do, they work real well. And a lot of people think that the compressor units is going to work a lot better than the ice units. That's really not the truth. The ice unit, you're going to put out about a 16, 17 degree delta T of the difference in temperature on either unit. And really the ice unit in the very beginning is going to do about 20 degree delta T. So it's really the convenience factor of doing a real AC or an RAC unit versus the other. So I don't try to upsell people on the RAC unit, which we would much rather sell by far. But the ice unit fits for the person that is flying 75 hours or under a year. Normally they'll put more time into getting ready for their flight. People that are flying 75 to 150, 200 hours, 300 hours a year, the RAC unit is usually about right. And somebody that's flying 400 or 500 hours a year, you know, doing one installed in the aircraft, you know, they can spend the $25,000 and don't mind that. But that would be kind of how I have always looked at it.
So that's your high-end product, right? Which is a permanent install.
Well, the permanent, we don't do the permanent install.
Gotcha.
I'm just, yes, but that the high end or the higher end on somebody that wants a unit all the time or doesn't mind paying that kind of price for it. Because what I find is fixing the unit, you know, as we all know, when you take an airplane into the shop, it's going to be well over $1,000. But being able to ship the unit back to us and ship it back to you, you know, you got $100 worth of shipping, and then our costs are normally under $200, $100, depending on what's wrong with the unit. So and it doesn't take your plane down. That was the nice thing about the portable unit.
That's huge, and a really good point. Thanks for pointing that out. On the in one of the go ahead.
I have somewhere I have to be, so I'm gonna have to slip away and log out. And but I'll be glad to come back for another discussion and love to talk to anybody. And we look forward to it.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate your time, and that of John and the photos from Cotton, who couldn't make it tonight. We will we'll definitely be back to feature particularly PJ's and Jeff Munford's innovations, but having your, you know, you're in quite a few. We do have one quick question. Can you tell me the approximate weight of your ICE unit? And then the second question, this just comes out, is do you have any idea how many have been installed in twins of any sort?
On the ICE unit, was this for Arctic Air, for Greg?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. The ICE units are about 50 pounds, including the ICE. Depending on which size we have 3 different sizes. The smallest unit will last about 45 minutes of run time. You literally just plug them into the cigarette lighter, and they circulate the air in the aircraft. The middle size unit is it runs about an hour and a half, and the larger unit is about 2 hours of run time. And the largest unit weighs about 55 pounds, and that's with about 45 pounds of ice in there. And it depends on what you use, if you use block ice versus cubed ice versus crushed ice, on how long they run and how hot the temperature is. So I can't give you an exact time on those. And those pull around 7 or 8 amps normally. And we use the same fans that we use on the RAC unit. So they still, the single fan unit will be about 200 CFM, and the dual fan unit will be 400 CFM. And they work really well. And those are the ones we sell them direct, or we sell them through Sporties, and have been selling them forever. Just about. Well, not as long as y'all's planes have been around, because y'all started before, I guess. But that's kind of what we started with the ICE units.
Hey, Greg, hey, mind if I jump in quick, CJ?
Please, Marty.
Greg, on the I got the 52 quart ice. I'm pretty happy with it. I've just been kind of experimenting back and forth between all crushed and block, and I'm sorry, cubed and block. Have you found a good combination of which type of ice to use that works best?
We normally say block ice and then fill around it with cubed ice, or just and you know, you got to start off having some water in there, and
right.
Then the ice melt. So you're going in, at the end of the thing, you're going to end up with a bucket of water.
Right.
But in the beginning, when the water's cooler, it's going to give you more. The air is really coming over the top of the ice, and then it's going through the coil. The water is circulating through the coil. It's an open source unit type thing. And with that, I find the block, trying to determine how people use it. And if they use it truly on the ground and just up to 2,000 or 3,000 feet and cut the unit off, it'll last for a long time. You know, your whole flight, a whole day.
That's how I use it.
But a lot of people will leave it and forget that it's running, and you know, just like a fuel pump or some other thing, that they'll let just run. And you know, so they're burning through the ice when they don't need it at 6,000 feet or 8,000 feet.
Yep, true statement. Yeah, with our planes, we come up to that's a pretty quick flight up to 10,000 feet. You're up there in 10 minutes, and you don't need it anymore after about 6,000 feet.
That's right. And that was the whole intent of the unit to begin with, was get up the altitude and cut it off. And And if everybody uses it that way, it works real well. You know, that was what I always said. You know, I've had people call me and say, "Oh, I can make this unit," and they can. There's no question that they can. Getting the coil that we had engineered for the unit, the cooler is no special. You know, it's a box. We use a rule bilge pump. All of that. But when you really start doing the insurance and the marketing and everything else on the unit, and I always tell people, keep up with your time that it takes them to build the unit, and how much do they make per hour. And if they're flying an airplane, they're not usually minimum wage employees. So it's it's fun. It's done. I've sold parts to people. I've helped people. This isn't my primary business. I'm in the fiber optic business and the hotel business, and but we've enjoyed doing it. I've enjoyed going to the shows, seeing people, and meeting other pilots. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Greg, I forgot a buddy that has a 310, and he also bought the 24-volt unit, and he did something to the motors, connected it up wrong or whatever, and you guys were fantastic on support. You sent him a couple new fan motors out right away and a pump, and he was back on his way again. But yeah, really good support.
Well, I appreciate that. And the one thing we do too is we always, because I don't try to upsell people into the RAC unit, is I always tell them for whatever they paid for the unit on an ICE unit, we'll always trade it in towards an RAC unit, or to go to the Bahamas. We go to the Bahamas a lot, and if they go to the Bahamas and rent our house, they get a free ICE unit. And we do a pilot's retreat down there, so we have a ball with Bahamas.
We might have to talk some more about a big old fly-in pilots retreat where we all end up at these icy.
We can make that happen. I can do that. So that would be a lot of fun. But we love the Bahamas, so I'll be glad to help with any of that if we can. That would be fun, though.
ComancheTown, Bahamas. Jimmy, what do you think? You've been to ComancheTown.
Hey, ask Greg about how many times. I think I went 13 times the first year.
Well,
it helps to have good health.
You tell Greg about ComancheTown, and you let me know how you think a bunch of Comanche pilots would fit into a pilot's retreat.
I think it fit real good. To be honest with you.
Greg, you're going to be sorry you ever said anything.
Okay, CJ, I'm going to stop recording, and I'll have to work with Pete. This will not be posted as early as it normally gets done. I'll have to work with Pete on how to do this because I haven't done this in almost 2 years.
Robert, thank you so much for stepping in. Everybody, thank you for bearing with us with our network difficulties. Gary Gray, who's talking about Icy Breeze, is like, I would love to come back. The questions here have given me some ideas for more things to talk about. Greg, we're thrilled you're willing to come back. PJ, your thing with its tiny footprint and its lower amperage and lower price point is exciting because it's more choices and it's going to solve a huge problem for so many of us. Your ability to do a permanent install because you're so small is intriguing. And we've got a couple of DERs and AMPIAs that now that we did that first remote consult with Matt Kirk, and we know it works, we can set up just a physical meeting. Nobody even has to leave, although we have airplanes, we could get together and just find out whether it's a possibility. I think that would be amazing. So